Pollock's most famous paintings. In this video, we will see the best artworks of Jackson Pollock, the most important American abstract expressionist painter in the world. Mural painting. Jackson Pollock's work, from 1943. The dimensions of the canvas in question are due to the characteristics of the first exhibition space for which it was conceived, the entrance wall of Peggy's house, who commissioned the young artist and specified the details for its realization. Aware of the importance that this entailed, Pollock will put a considerably high energy load in this work, both in the very act of execution and in the compositional reflections of the work. It is believed with certainty that, at the date indicated, Pollock already knew the action photography of the late 19th century and early 20th century, so this technique clearly influences mural. In addition, it should be noted that he had not yet developed the style of action painting that would later make him a great representative of American abstract expressionism. Recent studies have determined that the color palette used for this painting ranges between 25 and 26 different tones, applied in superimposed layers of paint with an agile and volatile brushstroke that covers almost the entire canvas. All this alternates with small empty spaces of pictorial material where the bare canvas forms the rest areas. The traced forms seem to link with each other in a repetitive and disturbing way in a sequential tour of the scene. The set works as an abstraction of the movement itself, generated through the energy that the artist channels on the work. Autumn Rhythm Painting, number 30. Jackson Pollock work from the year 1950. One of the most characteristic paintings of Pollock's dripping period. Around the year 1950, Jackson Pollock was at one of his best creative and critically successful moments. At that time he locked himself in his studio and, cigarette after cigarette, he dropped the paint on the canvas, splashing everything in a trance, and listening to his favorite music, bebop. In that experimental period, the artist created paintings like this one, where we see a chaotic painting in black, white, and brown, which lacks a focal point, which makes each part equally significant. More or less like the music of one of the greatest representatives of the jazz movement that Pollock liked, the musician Charlie Parker, who also jerked musical notes with his saxophone, improvising delirious and hypnotic melodies and rhythms. Lee Krasner, Pollock's wife, stated that her husband never had an aptitude for music but had a huge collection of jazz vinyl, including Parker's. With his beb pop, Charlie Bird Parker made jazz advance stratospherically, leaving far behind what had been done until then, since the big orchestras were in the doldrums due to the difficulty of keeping so many musicians after the war. With the freedom of being in small ensembles and a totally radical attitude, Bird played at a furious pace and filled his solos with as many harmonic and melodic ideas as he was capable of. We can bet that Pollock painted his autumn rhythm, with some snippet of Parker's otherworldly music blaring. In addition, it is not at all unreasonable to relate these two artists. Both young men, both addicted to alcohol and narcotics respectively, many believe that this had a positive influence on their works, both indisputable innovators in their respective disciplines, always from a detailed study of the classics and also of their contemporaries. The two of them working with apparently uncontrolled fury, improvising on a tightrope, leaving abstract snippets of genius full of great emotional charge, as we can see and hear right now. Convergence painting. Jackson Pollock's work, from 1952. Another huge Pollock canvas, nearly 12 feet wide by 8 feet tall. Another aggressive and dense explosion of colors resulting from various tangled splashes in which the artist mixes the expressionist with the abstract and a touch of surrealism, creating the first purely American style, abstract expressionism. For this reason, the critics of the United States turned to promote the artist, and even the CIA financed the movement because in the midst of the Cold War an artistic current of its own was needed that was also radically opposed to the prevailing socialist realism in the art of the communist countries. It is curious how the freest art of the time, made by a nonconformist and rebellious artist who, let's say, did not know how to draw, was sponsored by the ultra-conservative authorities of his country and the intellectual elite of the time. This work elevated the painter, who in those years was already a hardened alcoholic, and he felt frustrated knowing that the spectators were trying to find something that had something to do with the title, Convergence. From then on, he decided to title his works with a number, so that no one could search them for the slightest trace of figuration or meaning. White Light Painting. Jackson Pollock's work, from 1954. Jackson Pollock's art, with its chaotic but controlled aggressiveness and its action painting, manages to become a clear exponent of the avant-garde movement called Abstract Expressionism or New York School, in Europe, Informalism. It is characterized by non-figuration, but by a clear allusion to the subjective feelings of the artist. Pollock was a pioneer in dripping. The artist externalized his deep inner frustrations and tensions through intentional poetic splashes on his large-format canvases. In the work White Light, the artist reflects a universe in which he dives behind the thick tangle of threads of paint. Pollock carries out on this canvas, as in many of his other works, a search for his roots. Between creator and plastic work, a primitive land cohabits in a pulse which brutally interconnected with the artistic expression of its time. Step by step, color by color, drip by drip, white light is transformed into a one-dimensional and primary network that makes up the whole of the work. Jackson Pollock integrates into the painting by surrounding it and will even enter it. White light can be defined as a contrast to the abstract art of his contemporary Mark Rothko, who creates calm forms with measured and controlled parameters. Jackson Pollock creates in white light, the last complete work, a universe that is born from the depths of his consciousness, embodied with a great complexity of energetic and forceful movements. The artist feels strongly influenced by Mural and Picasso, who is reaffirmed by the pure colors of the former and the quick and powerful strokes of the latter in his creation of anarchic and agnostic sentiments. The seemingly spontaneous spray of paint on Pollock's hand becomes a deliberate gestural action. If we analyze this last complete work, created by the artist, from a psychological point of view, we appreciate a reflection of the personal conditions of its author, since he depended on alcohol, which did not leave him until the end of his life. In white light, not everything is white light, since Pollock's being is manifested in the dripping of his blacks and reds, the darkness and energy of a genius in one of the hardest moments of his dependence on alcoholism. The tormented spirit transformed into work. That was all for today's video. Tell us what you thought, and if you liked it, please give us your subscription and your like. This way you support the art community on YouTube. Until the next video, have a nice day.